He then walked off the train with blood dripping from the knife. This is obviously a horrible, horrible situation. But this is why federal statutes exist. They exist to take care of situations like this because no one should sit in fear when they sit on the light rail. If you sit in fear on the light rail, you sit in fear when you walk around the streets of our center city like I do every day. You sit in fear when you go to our parks like I do with my daughter every weekend. You sit in fear at our sporting events, our entertainment venues, at concerts, at restaurants, at our museums. These are all the things that we have worked as a city so hard to build. We built this city. Companies have come here in droves. More than 150 people move here every day. We built a city that people want to live in, but we can lose that all if we allow violent crime like this to go on in our streets. And I'm here to tell you, the federal government is going to save our city from that. To Erna's family, we will pursue justice. We will use the full weight of the law. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate your attention to this case. I know this has gotten national attention. I know that there is a lot of thoughts about this case. There's policy decisions being made because of this case. But as someone who just talked to the family of the victim, I hope you'll remember her because this is hard for them. It's their case, and we will bring justice here. I'll now turn it over to Special Agent in Charge Barnacle.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Thank you for everyone that's here today. I'm saddened to be up here today talking about a violent, heinous act that occurred on our metro system. This could have happened to any young person that was riding the train that night, but it didn't. It happened to Irina, and her death is an absolute tragedy. There is no one who will debate that point. Even more tragic, she chose to come to Charlotte to escape the violence of her war-torn home in Ukraine. Irina had settled into our community. She made friends. She immediately got a job. The first day she was allowed to work, and she got a work permit here, she got a job that very first day. She worked at a senior citizen center. She worked at a pizza place. She took care of animals in the neighborhood. She was building her young life. She had recently moved in with her partner. Her family let us know she graduated from college in Kyiv with a degree in art and restoration. We don't know the extent of what obstacles she faced in Ukraine, other than we did learn just a few moments ago that she was living in a bomb shelter. Sadly, everyone saw in surveillance video how tragic her life ended. We're shocked, we're saddened. It's very, very difficult. This young lady rode that train many times. She was probably tired after a long day of work and just trying to get home to her loved ones, but she never made it. In an instant, her life was over, and her mother, her father, her siblings, her brother and sister, and her other family and friends, their lives will never be the same. As you heard from U.S. Attorney Ferguson, we spoke with Erna's mother, Anna, and her uncle just a few minutes ago, and we told them of the federal charges brought against Carlos Brown Jr. We hope this additional charge will help bring them a measure of justice and accountability for this horrific act. I want to thank our partners, Chief Jennings and the CMPD. We work every day with this police department. We co-locate agents and officers and detectives from the police department on our violent crimes and safe streets task forces. This is not a policing problem. CMPD is out there every day protecting our streets. You may not know how close we are to the police departments, but throughout this state, our partnerships with local police departments and state departments are critical to the work that we do. The task force partnership is a force multiplier. CMPD and other local partners work closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office, this office, to assess whether local and state cases are appropriate to charge federally. We are pleased to supplement the Charlotte and Mecklenburg Police Department's work on this investigation and the appropriate federal charges that were brought forth today. The FBI will work tirelessly to hold violent offenders accountable. Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, has empowered every field office to shift resources to violent crime to help keep our city's streets safe. We will continue to work with U.S. Attorney Ferguson, the Department of Justice under direction of Attorney General Pam Bondi, and the FBI Director Patel to pursue justice for Irina and her family and for the people of Charlotte. In closing, Mr. Ferguson mentions this. The system has failed us in this case. There is no doubt. Everyone deserves to go about their daily lives, to get to work, to get to school, just across town without the fear of being attacked. We should live in a country and in a city where accountability, if you're convicted for a violent crime, is always paramount. Well, thank you, and I think we'll take questions.
Yeah, I want to add one thing. Before we take questions, I want to add one thing that I hope the family won't mind me sharing. But after Irina's death, the embassy in Ukraine called and said, "We'll help you bring her home." And her family said no. They said she loved America. We're going to bury her here. So I think we can give her an America to be proud of. As Mr. Barnacle said, something here is broken, and we're here to fix it. We're happy to take your questions. Right, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of speaking with the family, can you just talk a little bit more about that conversation? It's clear it was emotional for you. So can you talk about that conversation? What was the family's reaction to the new charges? And because not a lot of people have actually spoken to the family, so can you talk more about that?
Sure, and we were both there for the conversation, so you can add what you want. It was a very heavy conversation. We talked to her mother, we talked to her uncle. Her mother speaks very little English. We had a translator from the FBI there, and they wanted to talk about their daughter. That's what we talked about. Yes, ma'am.
Casey Jones from WCCD. Special Agent Barnacle, you mentioned that this was not a policing failure. Where exactly did the system fail?
It's hard to say. This man was charged 14 times. There's been numerous encounters with police departments. He was arrested by the CMPD in January, but he's still on our streets. So we'll have to figure this out, right? This is not a problem the FBI or the U.S. Attorney's Office can solve. We can work cases. We can react to crime. We can be proactive and try to prevent crime. Look, I think, President Trump's spoken about this case in the last few days, and he has daughters. I have daughters. So it really hits close to home, right? And why do we have people, whether there's mental health issues or violent crime issues, why are they on the streets? Why are our buses, our trains, our transportation systems almost homeless shelters or mental health shelters? We need to fix that. We need to clean that up. We can only do so much. This is going to take a lot more work from society, from the people in power and the politicians. It's not something I can solve, but we can work cases and we can bring people to justice.
Hunter.
Thank you for doing this. First off, charges came very quickly after the state side. I just wonder why it took this office 2 weeks to do one federal charge.
Yeah, well, federal charges are usually slower than state charges to begin with. I mean, the federal system is the first line of defense. They charge our violent crimes, our murders, our things like that. The federal system is really for repeat offenders, the worst of the worst. And in reality, the fact pattern here screams of a state crime. I mean, there was no gun used here. This was a knife case. There really is not a natural federal crime here. The federal crime we have is because it happened on a light rail system and because Congress has decided that that is essential to society. So we took the time to find that statute, do some research on that statute, make sure that we had the allegations and the facts to support that statute. And like most of our cases, we make sure our cases are pretty airtight before we bring them. And this was actually quite fast for us. We will sit on cases for months sometimes to make sure that we are successful once we bring them. Yeah.
Is this the right charge? Because it's my understanding under this statute, I'm not an attorney, but that he would have had to have been trying to take over the train or threaten other people, like personnel on the train. There is a federal charge for entering with intention to commit a homicide. It's a different statute. I just wonder how strong is this charge?
Yeah, well, so it is a broad statute, and part of the statute came out of 9/11, and some of it is meant for hijacking a train or things like that. But we're charging A7, subsection A7, aggravating factors, subsection B1, which are exactly for this situation. They are for when there is a passenger on the train and you do an act of violence on the train. And the reason for that is because hijacking a train is obviously a terrible thing that disrupts society, but making it so no one can ride the train or is too scared to ride the train is about the same threat. It's a terroristic act to make people afraid to go about their daily lives. That's what terrorism is, and that's why this statute is completely appropriate here. Now, this is a criminal complaint. We will indict later. We continue to look at facts. The FBI continues to investigate this case, and we may have more charges later. But for now, we have this charge, and we think it's an appropriate one. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Ryan over in Charlotte, so thank you for doing this. Have either of you been in discussion with the White House since this footage was released? And if you have, could you share about what was discussed?
I have not spoken with the White House.
No, nor have I.
Okay, then an alternative question if I could. My editor wanted me to check. There's some conversation, people who believe that they hear Carlos Brown say after the stabbing in that footage, I got that white girl. It's unclear to me if he says that. Are y'all able to confirm if he did say that or what he said?
We are still investigating. Obviously, we have the videotape. We have some other evidence as well. Our investigators who are sitting here in the front row are looking at other angles. As Mr. Ferguson said, there is potential for other federal charges. So we'll just let the
Everyone's so concerned about the charges. And again, this is the press conference for the Charlotte train stabbing with a young Ukrainian refugee in this country was stabbed to death on the train by a career criminal. Everyone talks about how the police are doing their job. Yes, I believe they are. But how about tactically? Here's a career criminal, 14 prior arrests, gets on this train. Maybe they should have some plain clothes officers on the train to spot a person like this who is acting erratically, who shows signs of mental illness. Maybe he could be watched. And in a lot of cities, in New York City being one of them, progressives have destroyed policing in a way that there is no more plainclothes officers on the trains in New York City. The transit police in New York City, I'm just using them to compare against Charlotte, and I don't know what, in fact, is the rules of engagement in Charlotte. There is no more plainclothes on the trains. So a very effective unit out of transit in New York City was disbanded because of politics, And I would imagine there's a good possibility that in Charlotte, the same thing or things have been done. And this career criminal, I don't have his arrest history in front of me. Apparently, he had 14 prior arrests, felonies. What is he doing out, And what is his mental state that he can terrorize a train and for no reason whatsoever stab a young lady to death? To go back to the press conference.
investigation play out. I can't comment directly on the facts.
Eric.
Yes, sir. I'm curious. You both mentioned the fragility of losing faith in the transit system. There have been a lot of people around this asking whether the transit system has structural flaws. Earlier, you said it's a breakdown in the system. So how does the transit system itself fit into the broader picture of this case?
Yeah, it's clear something's broken here, and it's probably more than one thing. I think certainly the state justice system has some issues, but I think you're right, the train does too. And we've seen recently people go on the train and report what's going on the train. It's become a mobile homeless shelter. It's an air-conditioned place. There's no one checking tickets. No one's using tickets. And quite frankly, the revenue from the tickets that could be collected could pay for more security on the train. So I do think there's more we could be doing on our train and more we should be doing, but that's not our job. Our job is to prosecute this case.
So there you go. Just like New York City, the trains in Charlotte are homeless shelters, and our politicians, our elected officials do nothing about it, but send the lip service. And then in a case like this, they hide because this is very ugly. This is extremely ugly. How about getting homeless people and mentally ill people off the trains? It's not a shelter. It's not someplace, and they're violating the rights of people that need to go to work every single day. But yet politicians, our elected officials, let's put it that way, our elected officials take a blind eye towards this. And we as citizens must demand safety and we're not getting safety.
Yes, ma'am.
You just said that there's not, wasn't really a natural fit initially for federal charges. At what point did you get involved to start looking at that for federal charges, and what made you do that then?
Well, I
You-
mean,
you were told
yeah.
first.
So Irina was murdered on the 22nd at about 10 p.m. I learned of the case on the 23rd in the morning. Our team was already in contact with detectives at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. From that day forward, we were in conversations with the U.S. Attorney's Office. So we've been talking about this from the get-go. But we pushed a little bit harder when we saw the videotape, right? And that I didn't see that evidence early on, and horrified like everyone else when I saw it, and as was Mr. Ferguson. Everyone was able to get together and come to a charging decision.
Why are the questions about what are his charges? What was he doing on the train? I mean, how do we prevent this in the future? How do we stop this in the future? How do we stop the next DeCarlos Brown career criminal from stabbing an innocent woman to death on the train? How are we going to do that? What's the plan, elected officials? How are we changing up so this doesn't happen again? How are we not allowing train cars to become homeless shelters? How are we not allowing mentally ill people to walk around with knives on them who also happen to be career criminals? What are we doing about that? We need answers. We don't need elected officials to now bury their heads in the sand, because this is a tough thing to talk about. And it's right out there. Everyone knows about it, but yet they'll do nothing about it.
And for us, it was a little bit, the act itself doesn't scream federal crime. But when we started to see the effects of that act, and we saw the public saying, we're not riding the light rail anymore, we're afraid to go to the park, that's when my mind and my office started saying, there's maybe something more than a single murder here. This might be a federal charge. And we started digging and found this charge. Yes, ma'am.
Courtney Davis with Spectrum News. This isn't the first incident that's happened on Charlotte Transit. There have been violent offenses on buses as well in the last couple of years. What is it that brought this to that level to get this amount of resources behind this case as well?
Yeah, well, we're concerned about the buses too. This is not just about rail, and we're concerned about the streetcar. We're concerned about the special transit vehicles that are used for handicapped individuals. This is a problem with transit, and it's not just transit. We're concerned about our parks and our streets and our center city, where convention goers come in droves. We're concerned about all of it. It takes a very particular case to get a federal charge, and sometimes, unfortunately, it takes kind of a snowball effect to get those federal charge, and we see that in a lot of our cases. We'll see, a whole lot of robberies before we get a gang case, or a whole lot of drug users before we get a big drug distribution case. Here we saw a lot of little crimes in the transit system that led to one big crime that was on video, and we found the federal charge. So that's how we got here. Yes, ma'am.
Should people feel safe on public transit in Charlotte?
Right now, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I can tell you that it's my goal for people to feel safe on the light rail in Charlotte. I think it's essential to life in our city that people feel safe there. I hope that one day everyone feels safe riding light rail. Right now, I think we need to see changes before people are going to feel safe on light rail. Yes, sir.
Guilty, could you once again explain the sentencing in depth?
Yeah.
What's on the table?
Yeah, and thanks for the question, because federal sentencing is significantly more complicated than sentencing in the state level. So if convicted, and convicting, that will be a conviction by jury of his peers in federal court over here. If convicted, we have a probation office that puts together a fairly lengthy report about that individual defendant. And that process takes about 3 months sometimes. There's a very lengthy report about his background, his prior crimes, his upbringing, anything that a judge will want to look at in sentencing. And then we will ask for a sentence, which I imagine will be a significant sentence in this case, but we don't know yet. And his attorneys will have an opportunity to argue for some other sentence that they think is appropriate. It goes before a federal judge. The federal judge considers that pre-sentence report, considers our argument, considers the defendant's argument, hears from the defendant if he chooses to speak, and issues an appropriate sentence at that time. The death penalty could be considered under this statute. We don't know if that's something we can seek under these facts yet. We're still researching. We're still investigating, but it is available under the statute, yes. Yes, sir.
You said earlier, especially that there's potential for other federal charges. Can you confirm that it maybe includes hate crime or racially motivated crime of some sort? Is that something that you are
That is you.
considering?
Looking into, yes, we're looking into every available charge in this case. If we find facts that this was gender motivated or race motivated, we will absolutely bring a federal civil rights charge in this case. If the facts don't show that, we won't. We're only going to bring a charge that the facts support. The investigation's ongoing. We think we very fairly have the facts for this charge, but we continue to look and we may add charges, and civil rights charges are certainly on the table.
One more question.
Two quick ones.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, this garnered national attention, as you know. Both of your bosses got involved, especially last night, publicly about it. I'm curious, what do you say to people who see what's happening here today and wonder if this is political grandstanding?
Yeah, I don't see how you would see this case as political grandstanding. And if you do, I think you should have the conversation that we just had with Arena's family, because there's nothing political about that. This is a heinous crime, and we are going to remedy it. I don't know what the politics is here. If this was a political grandstand, there would be an opposite side to this. Is the opposite side, let's allow murders on our light rail? Is the opposite side, let's let people out of state prison so they can commit other crimes? There's no other side to this. There's no politics to this. This is a pure and simple federal case.
And Russ, can you speak to the...
I want to say something.
Sure.
Sorry, go
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can debate that this woman was violently murdered on a train. Director Patel has changed the priorities of the FBI to address violent crime, the scourge to our cities and our country by cartels, by transnational criminal organizations, and by local street gangs. We have put resources to those matters. We anticipate more and more cases to be charged across North Carolina into a violent crime space. We're committed to working this. This is a priority from Washington, and I'm not afraid to say that. And Director Patel will get up there and I wish he could be here today. I'm sure he does too, to share the priorities of the FBI. Our job is to conduct investigations. Our job is to put people in handcuffs and turn them over to prosecutors to prosecute. And that's what we're going to do. That's what I have 200 agents in the state working full time to keep our streets safe.
Russ, I just wanted to ask,
Yeah.
you've seen in state court how long some of these cases involving mental health disorder forensic evaluations can take. How does that play in federal court, and do you find that being a hurdle in this case?
So, and I cannot say that will be an issue in this case or not. We don't know if there will be some sort of mental competency issue here or not. There is a process in federal court for that. Generally, a defendant sent for an evaluation. That evaluation can vary in time. We've seen it take a year in some cases, depending on the level of treatment needed, the level of evaluation. Sometimes psychiatrists need some time to get to know a patient before they can evaluate them. There's all sorts of variables, but we have had cases where that has happened, and ultimately a judge will decide if he is competent to stand trial or not. But one thing is for sure, this person cannot be allowed on the streets. He cannot be allowed on our trains. So whether he is involuntarily committed or he is behind bars for a violent act, he should not be on the streets of Charlotte.
Would that track happen concurrently in any way? Obviously, that's happened with the state as well. There are, at least have been concerns about his mental competency in the past, claims, statements that he made as well. Would that happen concurrently or on separate tracks dealing with the federal and state?
Yeah, so and obviously we want this case to go as fast as possible to bring justice for the victim's family. That is most likely going to be separate tracks because the state system and federal system have different standards, different legal standards, different processes they go through. I've called the district attorney about this case. We're going to work out the best way for the victims to get this to go forward, whether that's federal going first, state going first, some sort of parallel paths. We'll have to figure it out, but there are definitely challenges that. And generally when we bring a federal charge, the state charges are dropped. But this is a case where we have a first-degree murder charge, and we are supplementing with a federal charge, which I think tells you a little bit about the state system, that we can't trust that a first-degree murder charge is going to take someone off the streets for as long as we need them off the streets. We have to supplement with a federal charge.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I really appreciate you covering this. Thank you.
So,
All right. So you just heard from the FBI and the Department of Justice, and the suspect in the Charlotte train stabbing is being charged with a federal charge. Normally, this type of crime would not be federally charged, which they said in
You know, I don't know. I still think you're hearing things that at this juncture that he's going to be charged with a federal crime. Does that make anyone feel better? It doesn't do a damn thing for me. You know, this makes you feel better that he's the career criminal riding on this train. Let's make it not just a career criminal. Let's make it the mentally ill career criminal is being charged federally. What does that do for us? Does that help anyone here? How about the next person that does this on a train? Are we supposed to feel better? You think this is going to go out as a warning that this individual was charged federally, and is that going to prevent the next DeCarlos Brown, a mentally ill career criminal? Is that going to prevent the next DeCarlos Brown from stabbing someone on the train? I don't think so. I think not. You know, it's just, I think the big problem, of course, is the fact that mentally ill career criminals are on the train, period. I think that's the bigger problem, you know? And how are we policing our trains? I mentioned earlier on that how we are policing this. Look at that. She's there looking in her phone, as many people do, the thumbnail on the screen. Many people look through their phone on the train, killing time. And right up behind her, for no reason whatsoever, stabs her to death, you know. And as I said earlier, how we police our trains, we should probably look into that. You know, like I mentioned plain clothes units. And, you know, I can just really go from what my background was in New York City. Transit anti-crime, transit plain clothes was very, very, very effective. So what do they do if things are too effective in a progressive city like New York City? What do they do if the policing is too effective? Well, they get rid of the unit. That's brilliant, right? So our elected officials determine that they don't like maybe the heavy-handedness of an anti-crime unit, the successfulness of them. So they allow a career criminal like this person, DeCarlos Brown, to get on the train and stab this poor woman to death, you know, on the train. And then, you know, you see the way that our media reports on this. It's really rather disgusting, you know, how they report on this. What was the bigger problem here? Was it, is it perception, or is it the way that the media reports on these things? DeCarlos Brown, 14 prior felony arrests, right? And I'm sure he was a terror more times than this on the train. I'm sure he had committed crimes before on the train. You know, one of the biggest deterrents to subway crime in New York City, again, I'm using New York City as a comparison, is that 90 to 95 to probably 100% of the people committing crimes on the trains did not pay their fare. So why am I telling you this? Well, because what do you think the elected officials did in New York City, the city council? They made jumping the turnstile. They made it, instead of a theft of service misdemeanor, they made it a civil matter, which took the teeth out of enforcement, took the teeth out of law enforcement, arresting people and putting them in the system for 24, 48 hours for jumping the turnstile, which was a misdemeanor. Just change it. That's not right. That's not right that they're arresting people. It was very effective, extremely effective. So when things are effective against criminals, what do elected officials do in New York City and many other progressive cities? They change the law. Let's give the advantage to the criminal. Let's give the advantage to the criminal, because the poor guy probably had a bad childhood, you know. There's probably a reason he's like this. Let's not think of this poor woman, Irina Zarutska, freshly here from the Ukraine, from a war-torn country, and now she survives the Ukraine and gets murdered in Charlotte, North Carolina. How do we explain that? You know, how do we actually explain that she gets murdered in Charlotte, North Carolina, but survived? She survived the Ukraine, the war-torn country of Ukraine. So just absolutely outrageous, folks. I know a lot of you folks are very Danny Morgan, we know the reason he acts like this, but people are too scared to say it. Bob Gable, that is a job of the police. It's always after the judges and DAs don't do their job and the politicians don't want to have high crime statistics. Then they should do something about it. They should give the police the tools to do their job instead of taking away the tools, the enforcement tools that the police need to do their job. This is, to anyone who's watched this is a horrific case, and we all want to see justice for this lady, but she lost her life. So let's hope that the next DeCarlos Brown is not sitting on a seat near you on another train because some elected official feels bad and thinks he should be let out of jail or prison, or not charged or released on bond, so that someone else can lose their life over this. So, folks, I brought you that quickly when the press conference came out. I wanted to go to it. This is just a really horrible case, and we'll be following it as it moves forward. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.